place. We're covering the top 7 questions to ask regarding AI accountability measures and what areas to actually cover in lieu of regulations that are coming out in the future, near future, basically. Look into those and stay ahead of the pack and make sure that you're doing the things right. I'm going to make myself small again now so you can have a look at what's on my screen and we'll go through that. What we're seeing here are all the related areas to um, AI accountability measures. Let me zoom in a bit. So you can see here. Let's first start out with AI accountability managers itself. A quick bit of a description. AI accountability measures, what are they actually? Well, they're processes and procedures in your organization that you design to make sure that AIs are used responsibly and ethically. And there's a whole gamma of responsibly and ethically that you need to be looking at. You can start out by asking 2 questions in your organization to make sure that you're looking into this. Are there clearly established measures and accountability for program progress? And have appropriate governance and accountability measures and processes been implemented? Do we actually have those? If I'm looking for actions to undertake there, then we're looking at these kinds of actions to look into, these recommendations for specifically AI accountability measures. We look at keep track of the planning and work processes, perform analyses of the investment savings associated with the organization of robust cybersecurity measures, know the work breakdown structures of your project processes, pretty standard basic stuff. Plan to implement any load balancing, scaling, or redundant resiliency measures. Have a look at business continuity there. Interact with this data to effectively manage the performance of your people processes. So this specifically looks at the processes behind AI accountability measures to make sure that you have that in place. That's why we have this word here. This is a main keyword coming out of this one here, the question. So if I click on that, I'd get way more questions surrounding processes to make sure that we're doing the right things here. So that's how this is all connected. That's what these colors and these balls actually mean. All this data, there's a lot of data in here, is in the data set down below. There's a link attached to this video. Go there, have a look at it. And if you want to, you can purchase it and access all this data right away. Now, so AI accountability measures are processes and procedures designed to ensure that AIs are used responsibly and ethically. Now, what do you need to do that? What you need to do that are all these balls here, these green, bluish balls. You need to look into validation procedures, error prevention, privacy safeguards, accountability mechanisms, accountability assessment, bias detection, data governance, responsible data usage, legal liability, algorithmic governance, etc. I won't read them out loud because there's close to 100 subtopics that you need to be looking into and managing when you're dealing with AI accountability measures. But just for the sake of showing you that's actually content beneath this, I'll just pick out one, a random one. Ethical auditing, again, a description. Ethical auditing is a process used to assess and monitor the ethical implications of an AI system to ensure ethical accountability. Questions you can be asking here are these in my organization to make sure that we're doing those, that we've got that covered right. How adequate are management assurances on ethical risk management? Does your organization have clear ethical codes, values, and policies? Are procedures for ethical review of the data collection protocols in place? And you see one more thing that I haven't mentioned yet before we go there. If I double click on this again, you'll see recommendations and things that you can be doing to cover that. Those are the green balls here. So we have the bluish balls here, the blue-green balls that give you the subtopic that you need to be covering, that has questions attached to it, an explanation, and recommendations to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Now, one more thing I haven't mentioned are these little balls here. These are the functions or the job roles that you need to have in place to make sure that you're doing that you're doing the right thing here in relationship to AI accountability measures and ethical auditing. So we need to talk to the data auditor, the privacy auditor, and the ethical risk analyst. Now, ethical risk analyst, just as an example, if I click on that one, see more comes up, all the activities that belong to that person's role, that person's task. So there's multiple ways of looking into this, and that's the beauty of having this in the graph database. Again, all the data is down below, that you can enter this from the main topic, which is AI accountability measures, looking at all the subtopics that you need to be covering, making sure that you're doing those. Attached to those are the questions that you need to be asking in your organization, and to each question we have these activities. and the job roles themselves. You can look into those to make sure that we've got those. Now, quickly, before we run to the 7 most important questions to ask, I'll show you quickly what the job roles are that are in there. So you get an idea of what you need to be covering in job roles and in functions when you're dealing with AI accountability measures. Data engineer, policy arbiter, policy maker, chief compliance officer, data cleaning specialist, ethical officer, ethical engineer, data quality assurance manager, validation engineer, data science ethicist, and AI governance specialist, and way more. So there's close to 100 job roles, functions, tasks that you need to be covering in your organization to cover AI accountability measures. So if I, for instance, then just pick one here, data privacy officer, I get all the questions asked of that data privacy officer, make sure that you're doing all those, and the actions in place, the recommendations in place to make sure that we're covering all that. All right, so those are all the responsibilities, all the job roles in place. And as I've said as well, there's a lot of questions in here. These are all the questions that you can be asking and need to be asking when you're dealing with AI accountability. And attached to these are all the recommendations and the job roles. So it's a lot, basically. That's what I'm trying to convey here. It's a lot that you need to be thinking about. There are a lot of subtopics that you need to be thinking about. There are a lot of questions in each subtopic that you need to be thinking about, and recommendations and things that you need to be doing, that you need to be thinking about. So if I look at the best ideas, so the recommendations, those are the green balls, remember? Then we get this. So these are all the recommendations in here to make sure that you have AI accountability measures in place. And they're linked to, if I just click on one, they're linked to a question, have easy informative diagnostics configured for your applications by default, link to a question, what is data privacy by default, click on this one, then the rest that's related to this one will open, which is privacy guidelines to ensure data collected from AI items are ethically and responsibly used in a way that respects the individual's rights and freedoms. Okay, so now you have an idea of what's in this data set, all the data that's in here. In total, there's 95 AI accountability measures, functions, roles, and their responsibilities. There are 419 essential inquiries, so these questions regarding AI accountability measures, and recommendations. There's 1,679, all in all, covering up to close to 100 subtopics. So the subtopics, if I click on this one, see if it comes up. The subtopics are the green, the greenish balls, green bluish balls here, privacy guidelines. See, that's a subtopic. All right, now you know how this is all connected. Now, before we go into anything further, let's go to the main arena, the main topic of the day, which is the 7 most important questions to ask when you're dealing with AI accountability measures. How do we come up with this one? The 7 most important questions you ask. Good question. As the dataset has 419 questions in there, well, what it does is basically transformer technology. So it looks at the most important questions. It starts with question 1, then looks at the relationship of that question to all the other questions, and it triggers a priority score, an importance score, based on all the words that are in there, all the sentences, the lines that are in there, related to all the other questions. And it keeps doing that with all of the questions against all the other ones. And then the most important ones keep bubbling up to the top. That's basically what's happening here. So there's a bit of AI around it itself that we've built to make sure that we've got, out of all the questions, the most important ones bubbling to the top. All right, let's start with the first one and open it up and see what we got here. Can AI accountability practices have meaningful impact in the absence of legal standards and enforceable risk thresholds? So if you don't have legal standards yet in place, which in other cases is not quite clear yet, and enforceable risk thresholds, if you don't have that in an organization, have a look at this. So make sure that you're doing that you're taking care of accountability standards, which are there are measures put in place to ensure responsible and ethical use of AI, and it's related to accountability standards. That's what it's doing here. So get the auditor and assessor in the organization, and the monitor to make sure that we're answering these questions here. And while we're dealing with the accountability standards, we have some other questions that we can ask. So I'm clicking that away, otherwise it becomes too much. So what do we need to be looking for? Measure the impact of the operational readiness for AI. Have you got every angle covered? Basically, that's what we're looking for here. And as you see here, these are both related to impact. The questions related to impact will pop up when I click on impact. So if I want to go more and dive deeper into impact, see what comes up. If it's a lot, then probably not a lot, so that's good. Like data would be a massive one. So this is where I get more questions about impact, and then I can dive into those. Another way of looking at this. But we digress. Let's go back to this one. Can AI accountability practices have meaningful impact in the absence of legal standards and enforceable risk thresholds? We've done this one. Have a future in human rights during AI implementation. Make sure that you keep an eye on human rights. Agree with the approach to determine high-risk applications of AI. Have consumer preferences and data on the impact of the whole thing, and understand the impact of AI on your organization's use of AI in data. Have privacy and information security policy and legal compliance and regulatory policies and practices. Which ones will be the most and the first ones to move up the value of AI to have in place? So, can AI accountability practices have meaningful impact in the absence of legal standards and enforceable risk thresholds? Basically saying, look at what you got already and dig into that together with assessor, auditor, and monitor what's available. We haven't mentioned this one yet, and that's the priority score that I mentioned before. So the highest prioritized questions pop up to the future, and that's the score attached to it. Next one, what oversight and accountability mechanisms are in place to ensure regulatory and ethical compliance? Develop your ability to exploit AI, make use of risk profiles to support your oversight, foster a culture of shared responsibility and accountability, and have on-site dedicated solely to guideline and utilization management development as well as oversight. So we need oversight here, oversight and accountability mechanisms in place. Deal with the ethics officer and the data protection specialist here to do that. Ethical oversight helps ensure that AI systems are developed and used responsibly by addressing safety, fairness, and human rights concerns. Question number 3, what privacy and data security measures and standards are required to be adhered to? So privacy standards in the context of AI accountability measures help ensure that personal data is utilized responsibly with respect for an individual's right to privacy. Demonstrate you meet the impact standards, SDG, have specific measures for all or most of your established performance standards, use regular internal and external audit reviews of your compliance measures related to security. Make sure that you have privacy and data security measures in place and standards and adhere to them. So deal with the information security officer and the compliance officer again here. Does your organization have data governance guidelines in place to ensure ongoing data integrity? So you need transparency guidelines. There are rules and standards that are put in place to ensure AI systems are accountable, unbiased, and explainable. Right, especially that, not just gobbledygook code. Don't want to see that. Ensure the integrity of your stakeholders. Make sure they have high power and low power depending on their interest. And minimize the impact of a catastrophic accident in terms of your organization's financial liability, sustainability, and integrity, and ensure the integrity of your stakeholders. That's what we're doing here. We need the data curator and the data steward for this. Have appropriate governance and accountability measures and processes been implemented? AI accountability measures are processes and procedures designed to ensure that AIs are used responsibly and ethically. Get the data scientist, the policy analyst, and the ethical AI specialist involved and look at your processes again. See, that's a recurring theme, processes in your organization. Keep track of the planning and work processes. This is the number one question that we've had before already. Interact with data to effectively manage the performance of the data and know the work breakdown structures. Is the method used as part of other accountability or data sharing mechanisms? Interesting. So looking at the accountability, is this a method that you're using for AI accountability measure? Is it part of another scheme that you've implemented in your organization, another accountability mechanism processes? Accountability assessment is a process for testing the effectiveness of AI accountability measures to ensure that the technology is being used responsibly. Have the ethicist involved here and recognize or use any of the concepts for the function cloud accounting AI. So make sure that you have accounting in place for AI. Accountability measures. And here we have the last question. Is your information security and data privacy policy in compliance with industry standards and regulations. Do we look at those actually? Privacy compliance in the context of AI accountability measures is the practice of ensuring data privacy is maintained when collecting, processing, and using personal information in AI applications. The data protection officer, the privacy auditor are involved into that, and we're looking at these areas here. Manage growth in the face of heightened compliance, have strong reporting systems, corporate governance, and high levels of compliance, protect privacy and data privacy regulation and legislation where they are applicable to the AI. So with these 7 questions, most important questions to ask when you are figuring out, are we doing AI accountability the right way? This is where you have your roadmap. So start here. Start looking at these 7 questions in your organization and talk to your assessor, auditor, monitor, data protection specialist, ethics officer, information security officer, compliance officer, etc. This is the team that needs to work out AI accountability measures in your organization. And they need to be looking at the following area to start out with: accountability standards, ethical oversight, privacy standards, transparency guidelines, AI accountability measures, privacy compliance, and accountability assessment. These things they need to be looking at. And if I want to dive further, I can look into the job roles, I can look into the yellow balls. It'll give me more question around that area because there's a lot of data in the data set below. So if you should be so inclined, purchase the data. It comes in a nice book. That's one PDF book format. But the most important one is all the data is in a CSV file available with all the connections that you can simply import in wherever you want to use that. Again, 95 accountability measures, functions, and their responsibilities. Those ones, 95 explained. 419 questions regarding AI accountability measures, and 1,679 accountability measures recommendations. And that's all in the main data set. And if you watched some of my videos before, that's the one I like to end out like with a bang and an explosion on the screen, which is going to load in a few seconds. And there it is. So this is the complete data set and all the data that's in there and all their connections. So that's why it's going to take a while to load, even when I'm on a very fast Mac machine doing this video. This is all the data in the data set. You can see here all the colors, all the activities, all the questions, all the job roles, all the recommendations for AI accountability measures. In the data set below, also on your screen right now. Have a look at it. And for now, I had a blast. Thanks for having me, and see you again tomorrow.